having a good understanding of what your income in retirement is going to be is really important. And it's also important to understand how your income is going to compare to the average retiree's income in your state and also nationwide, because some states are much more expensive to live in than others. And I think people are just going to be shocked at how much the variation is in retirement income by state. Obviously, we know expenses vary, but by state. So nationwide, we're at a household retirement income of about $28,000. But on a state level, the difference between the highest and the lowest is staggering. The highest is a little over $43,000, and the lowest is barely above $20,000. So that's a huge variation, and it gives you a feel for, what are the expenses like for a retiree? Because most people in retirement are going to be spending all of their retirement income. So understanding what the average is can be super helpful. All right, let's talk first about what the highest state is and the lowest state. And unfortunately, it's not going to bode well for politicians. There's a song by a gentleman by the name of Oliver Anthony that in 2023 went viral. And the title is "The Rich Men North of Richmond." And Oliver Anthony was dead on, because if you look at the state with the highest average retiree income, it is the District of Columbia. And it is just a little over $43,000, $43,080. And the next highest state, okay, so you can argue District of Columbia. Some of us put an asterisk next to that. Is that a state or not? So the next highest is actually quite a bit lower than that. It's $36,000, just a little over that. And what is the lowest state in the nation? For that, I should make you wait to the end, but I don't like when YouTubers do that to me. So it's actually Indiana, and it's a little over $20,500. So, why does this matter? It matters because it can give you an idea of what your expenses are going to be in various states. So I think getting a handle on this is really important. Okay, so let's break this down. And before I go there, I want to share with you some ways as I'm going through this data for you to think about how this can be useful. So if you're younger, if you're in your 40s, your late 30s, be thinking about, okay, this is what the average retiree's income is. How much am I likely to get from Social Security? And the rest of that, the difference between the average retiree income and what you're going to get from Social Security is what your savings have to do. And then some of us want to be, maybe twice what the average is. And so it gives us an idea from a planning on how much we need to save. It also gives us a better understanding of how retirement expenses vary by state. I've already touched on that. And then it also gives you some high-level expense planning. Like if somebody told me they were planning on retiring in the District of Columbia, and they said, hey, I think my Social Security and my retirement income altogether is going to be $30,000 a year, I would say, that's probably going to be tight, because the average retiree's income, as I mentioned earlier, is a little over $43,000. I do want to give credit for this report. This is by smartasset.com. They wrote up this report. And I think it's really helpful. We're going to go through this listed alphabetically. We're not going to go through every state, but I'm just going to point out some highlights. Alabama is right at $25,000. Remember, the median for the United States is $27,617. So that's the median, and that's for a household. Average household has a little over 1.5 people in it. It's not individual retirement income. So Alabama is a little below the average. California, a crazy expensive place to live. There the average retiree household income is right under $35,000. We talked about the District of Columbia at $43,000. Let's just go here and look at some more outliers. Idaho is the state next to me, which is $24,752. We talked about Indiana being the low. I went to undergrad in Indiana, and frankly, it surprises me that Indiana is the lowest in the nation. I think the quality of life is really high in Indiana. I enjoyed my time there. I had to work way too hard being in college, but I did enjoy my time. It's a great state. Okay, what are some other states that are worth calling out here? Massachusetts, where they have a lot of colleges. It might be the state with the highest number of highly ranked colleges per capita. And you can see they're right at 32, a little under $32,000. So how is Alaska higher than Massachusetts? I don't know, but I suspect it has to do with the oil fund that the citizens of Alaska get, because they're extracting so much oil from the state of Alaska. Instead of paying tax into Alaska, the citizens there actually get a check from the state of Alaska. So I suspect that's playing in. Now, we're coming up on Mississippi. That's the one that I thought would be the lowest in the country, full disclosure, but it's at $23,347, so about $3,000 below the national average, and surprisingly, about $3,000 more than the average retiree income in Indiana. Nevada is a little over $30,000. I should say almost $32,000. What's another outlier here? Oregon's right at $28,500. Pennsylvania's a little over $24,000. Utah, as I record that, that's where I'm currently at. Utah's at $28,632. And Utah's done a good job of adding a lot of high-paying tech jobs. So I think that's starting to be reflected. I wonder where we were a decade ago. I suspect it was quite a bit lower. So Utah's made a lot of progress. Let's see what else. Okay, Wyoming which is the least populated state in the country. Wyoming has an average retiree income of $26,465. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is how did that income change over the last year? And this chart here by the United States Bureau of Economic Analysis shows how the wages have increased. You want to be in a state that's dark red because it means that you've had the biggest increase. So you can kind of look there. You can see, again, to highlight, Utah is 3.8%. You can see that's higher than what California was at 2.9%. And I think that's because some of the tech jobs in California moved out to Utah. Texas, shout out to you, Texas. Increase of wages over 5% is great. Arkansas, somehow you stayed completely flat. Very seldom do you see 0.0, but completely flat. And so, you know, as we look at retirement, as we look at places that we may want to live, places like New York City, places like San Francisco, you know, these all have different expense allocations, expenses associated with them. So we want to be careful. I called out Texas earlier. As you can see from this photo, Texas is a beautiful state. 5% wage increase year over year. Florida is a state where a lot of people go to retire. Let's go back to the report and see where Florida falls on this for average retiree income. Again, the average is about $27,500, and Florida shows up at $30,158. So kudos to you, Florida. Colorado, let's take a look at what Colorado did as well. I used to live in Colorado, and Colorado comes in at $32,379. So great place to live, good wages there. And as you're thinking about what state that you want to live in, I also want you to plan ahead and be ready to pull the trigger and be ready to jump when the time is right for you. So don't wait until you're at retirement age to think about when you want to retire. Think about it ahead of time. And that's what this video is here. 5 reasons to retire as soon as you can. I'll see you in there. Bye-bye.